These last few slides are going to be related to parent education and successful relationships. The last slide does include the references for this if there's any information that you're wanting to dive into further. I mentioned this earlier already that all teachers are parent educators. Whether you wanted that role or not, parents can learn a lot about their child and child development through teacher-parent communication. And so, although there is a license specifically for parent educators, I hold that license. I very much view every teacher as a parent educator, and I I feel like kind of the next stage of what parent educators could be doing, those that have the license, can be supporting teachers in communicating with parents. That's something that a lot of school districts in Minnesota are starting to look into because we're noticing that there's such a need for that. And again, there's such big roles that teachers are having to take on, and many are wanting more support with that. So, tips for successful communication: acknowledge that the parent is the child's first teacher. Again, we've mentioned this before, so a lot of this that we're going to be going through here is kind of a summary of all of the other things, but hopefully just kind of some good takeaways. Assume the parents love their child and want what is best for him or her. Assume positive intent and don't jump to conclusions. Ask questions. Let the parent know you like their child, even if you're talking to them about challenging situations. Something that I do as a teacher when I am struggling to like a child, we are all human, and that can happen. I first step back to try and figure out why that is. I know a couple weeks ago we were talking about triggers. Sometimes it's a child that is triggering for me for whatever reason. Sometimes it is reminding me of a past student and I maybe perhaps felt like I never quite figured that child out. Am I going to be in the same situation again? Whatever it is, I always step back to think of the why. And then the next thing I do is really start every day after class, write down what are some positive things that I saw in that child. And I work really, really hard to focus on those positive things because I don't want to approach a parent about a challenging situation with a child if my brain has more negative things thinking going on about the child than positive ones. And so that's something that I consciously do, actively do as a teacher, and I will share that with my colleagues that might work in the classroom with me so they can help support me through that and then help me maybe they can point out some positive things they're seeing with the child too. So again, that's something that you want to do with a trusted colleague, because it can feel pretty vulnerable to be able to acknowledge out loud that there's a child that you're not liking. But I always feel like it's extremely uh, I find it helpful when my colleagues share that too, because then we can support each other in looking at that child in different ways. Express that you want what is best for the child too. I think that's really important, especially if you're having to bring up to a parent that may be unaware that there might be going on with their child to start with, I just really want to be uh, want what's best for your child, and these are the things that we're doing to support him right now, but we're wondering if there might be more supports out there that would be even better for him, and would you be willing for us to kind of look into that some more to see if there's more we could be doing to help him out. And view yourself and the parent as a team. That's something that if I've had a tough conversation with a parent where they've reached out to me with a hard thing, or if I've reached out to them with a hard thing, I try to follow it up either in person the following day if I see them, or an email, and just say, I really appreciate that we're a team with this. Let's keep talking. Just really appreciate your feedback. So, and I do try to be encouraging when parents come to me with a concern. Now, this, I will be honest, has come with age and wisdom. It was hard not to get defensive when I was in my earlier years teaching. It was hard for me to not take it really hard. And not that I don't still sometimes feel those things inside. However, think it's really helpful when a parent does come to us with a concern because it shows that they're comfortable doing that. And I try and look at it as an opportunity for me to learn. And even if I may not agree with them, I do usually thank them for coming to me with a concern, because some alternatives could be they could go talk about to other parents about the concern and it become this bigger thing than it needs to be. They could go talk to my supervisor about the concern without talking to me first, and then I don't have a chance to really work with it at all. Or they could be letting it fester and then it blow up later on. And so I tend to provide a lot of positive feedback to parents after they have brought up concerns or questions to me. And I find that it just builds this really great trust. And occasionally it becomes only in small situations has this happened where it becomes they're coming to me with a lot of things often. But I would say most of the time, 99% of the time, it just sets the stage for this very trusting relationship. So, what are the messages parents need to hear? They need to hear that some levels of anxiety are healthy and good, right? We know that. If they're worried about how their child might be feeling and that the child might be feeling anxious, that's an okay thing. All kids should feel somewhat anxious. If they're not feeling a little anxious, that's actually kind of a problem, right? Before a test, we all feel a little anxious. Kids need to experience failure and disappointment. This is an important thing for us at all levels to be able to help parents hear and begin to understand so they can bring that into their home life too. Be clear about the level of involvement desired from the parent for school projects. So, especially in middle school, high school, maybe that first year of middle school, if that's the grade you teach, to really lay out like, hey, this might have in elementary school, you might have helped your child more with this type of project. Maybe not, depending on the elementary school. But these are the expectations at this age group. This is what we're expecting from parents at this point. I've had, not directly to me, but at like parent orientations or back to school nights in high school where they will specifically say if the child has a concern, we prefer that the child come to us first. You can reach out to us, but we really want at this point in development the kids working on those skills to be able to advocate for themselves. That is super useful information for parents of teenagers to have, because a lot of parents of teenagers may not realize that that's the appropriate thing. They may think that they're not being a good enough parent if they don't do the work for the kid. And so, again, think about different ways that you might be able to kind of move some of those things in. Unfortunately, I've noticed some teachers feel less confident doing that until they've become parents themselves, but I don't think that necessarily has to be the case because you know development. We're not telling them how to parent. We want to be careful about that line. We're just explaining what the expectations are and what the child is capable of developmentally. Provide tips for parents on how to spark conversations with their child about school, their friends, and their mental health. Again, that will look different at each age group, but super useful for parents to have. I've seen one of my school districts, this started being worked through right before COVID. So hopefully they'll keep it going this year. But it was kind of a team working on once a month newsletter on a specific topic with these little boxes, kind of with conversation starters on that topic and how that might look at different age groups. And so there's different ways that either mental health professionals within the school or student advocates or instructional coaches or parent educators might be able to kind of support some of those efforts district-wide. And then let parents know it's super useful for you to know if there are any changes taking place in the child's life. It's surprising to me how sometimes parents don't share information that is so critical. For example, a couple years ago, I had a child where the cops had been to their house because there is a domestic situation, and the child observed that, and they didn't tell us until I went to them asking, is everything okay? She's been really withdrawn at school and kind of clingy, and it's just very different from the child that we typically see, and that's when they would share. And so sometimes it's an embarrassment factor. but it does help us understand. And I may not necessarily ask the child directly about that experience, but at least, unless the parent wants me to, or if it unless it feels like the right thing to do in the moment, based on whatever else might be going on. But if the child were to start a conversation about it, or if they start lashing out, I can have so much more of an understanding of what is really going on with the child. Strong positive relationships with parents play a key role in retaining teachers too. Teachers are less likely to leave a program if they not only feel like they have connections with the other staff, but if they have connections with the families in the school. Um, I would imagine that would be greater with early childhood up to K-5, because obviously middle school and high school you have a lot less interactions with the parents. But that is a key thing, especially for administrators to keep in mind. We can learn so much more about a child by understanding and getting to know his or her parents, family situations. This in turn helps the child have a more successful time in your classroom and beyond. And again, I can't emphasize enough that the work we put in building those relationships is um, is always worth it. And um, the angle we approach parents at will make a difference in how they respond back to us. And so think about that before you start a conversation with a parent. If at the end of the day you are feeling pretty fired up about a situation and you know you have to share that with the parent, choose your timing. Maybe step back and maybe you wait to send them a message until after you've gotten home, or after um, or maybe you can just kind of decompress a little bit, because in the heat of the moment it is not does not tend to be the best time to reach out to a parent, because they right away are going to get defensive. And if it is a child that challenges them at home too, they're probably already feeling so frustrated, and we don't want life to get even worse for the child when they go home because of what happened at school. And so really consider where you're at emotionally when you are going to have a conversation with parents, and you can be honest with them about that, or you can at least say, I'm sorry I didn't call you about this yesterday, I had to go right into a meeting. I guess that's not being honest if that's not the case, but to acknowledge that I really did want to call you yesterday, or I really wanted to call you yesterday, but it's just a hard day. I needed some time to decompress. And I just want to tell you, some things that were hard with Johnny's day, and what we're planning to do to hope it will be better today. And just wondering if you've noticed any of these changes at home too, or what you've observed. Again, continuing to go back to what input do they have for us that can support us in our role too. So here are the excuse me, the different references. I'm sure there's far more that you could dive into as well if you're wanting to talk more specifically about parent communication. I am always up for those conversations. I would also encourage you to find out what role the parent educators in your school district have with beyond their early childhood family education role. That is something that, again, I mentioned in one of the other videos, that a lot of school districts are trying to consider of how could that role expand a little bit more. It may not ever really expand to that middle school, high school age group, but I could see it expanding to K through 5, and it would be really useful if you as teachers had suggestions of how that might look within your own school district, or if it's already happening. I know Minneapolis Public Schools has done a lot of phenomenal things with their early elementary grades with parent educators. So anyways, obviously this is a topic I enjoy talking about and feel very passionate about, and hopefully through these 6 videos you got some tidbits of new information, or at least was reaffirming to some of the work that you're already doing. So thank you for the work that you not only do with your students, but that you do with the people that care for them in their